everyone, welcome back to another classic movie review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the movie Year of the Dragon from 1985, directed by the late great Michael Cimino. This film stars Mickey Rourke in the lead role as a jaded police captain called Stan White. Rourke's character is assigned to crack down on the rising violence in the Chinatown district. I gotta say, Mickey Rourke, I've always been a fan of him. Mickey Rourke is a man, clearly, he's a talented artist, but of course, he has his own demons. Thinking about it, I've seen films from him like Rumblefish, Angel Heart, The Wrestler, and I don't know, I guess maybe having those personal demons, like in so many roles, Rourke is able to, or he manages to channel those demons into his performances. And this movie, Year of the Dragon, is no different. Now, as I mentioned, this movie is directed by Michael Cimino. I'm very familiar with Cimino's more famous work, such as The Deer Hunter and also the Western epic Heaven's Gate. I saw those movies years ago. They are absolute classics. I knew about this film for a long time, never actually got around to seeing it up until a few days ago. But yeah, like The Deer Hunter, especially like Heaven's Gate, Michael Cimino's projects, they are big budget movies and they have a definite grand scope, so to speak. Year of the Dragon, it's a very technically crafted film, and credit to the great cinematographer Alex Thompson. Thompson delivers a beautiful looking piece of cinema here. You can tell this movie has been made by a group of talented individuals that have experience and kind of know what they're doing. 2.5 hours, it's a fairly long movie, but it is a gangster epic, it really is. Nothing looks cheap on the screen. Even like the New York alleyways, they have a very, the smoke coming up, they have a very cinematic quality to them. This movie just had overall just a great atmosphere, and you can see that it's a very well-made piece of cinema. And actually, talking about Alex Thompson, the cinematographer, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that he actually previously worked on Michael Mann's movie The Keep from 1983. Now, that movie, I will definitely be getting around to doing a review of that at some point soon. I do really like The Keep. It's a really haunting movie, and I didn't know Alex Thompson did both movies, so once I found that out, and I then thought back to The Keep and just some of the really awesome visuals that we see in that movie, I thought, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's the same guy, and clearly Alex Thompson's gone on to bigger and better things as a cinematographer, now working with Michael Cimino here in 1985. As I said, a grand scope, big gangster epic that, I highly recommend. So the movie follows Stanley White, Mickey Rourke, who delves deep into the Chinese crime underworld in an attempt to basically bring it down. This is not a undercover operation, so to speak. So from the start, Stanley makes his presence known to the figureheads of Chinatown, and very quickly things turn against him and he becomes, the main target for these Chinese triads. Mickey Rourke is like, listen, I'm after you, I'm investigating you, I'm creating a case, I'm gonna bring all you down. And they're like, okay, well, who the hell is this guy? Like, right, what? Like, and at the start of the film, once Stanley gets given the case, he's showing his face around Chinatown, he's becoming known to everyone. And initially I thought that might have been a strategic move on his part. Stanley making his presence known to purposely create a stir in the community, so to speak. maybe him, being so active and so open to everyone in the community would maybe act as a warning against the violence, the rising violence that's happening in Chinatown. That's kind of what I thought of it initially. But as the movie goes on, it's clear to see that the Stanley character is on the edge of a nervous breakdown. We then actually learn more about Stan's previous life as a soldier in Vietnam. And then, we start to piece it together and things start to become clear that clearly this character has some sort of, some form of PTSD, or, he's got some serious mental struggles. And yeah, once you see the Rourke character, going further and further downhill, just kind of going out all stops to try and, bring down these Chinese triads, it's quite sad to see. Stanley's unhinged behaviour and determined pursuit to bring down the triads only escalates matters to the point where even Stan's superiors basically warn him and tell him, hey, back off Chinatown. You're only meant to, stop the rising violence. You're trying to cut the head off the snake, and that was never your mission to begin with. Stanley being Stanley, having those threats, it only emboldens him to pursue his task to bring down the triads even more. So he is an ex-soldier, a police captain, a jaded cop who is just hell-bent on bringing down the Chinatown mafia. Separately to this, we have several scenes with Stanley and his wife Connie, and that was played by Caroline Cava. At the very start of the film, they're having relationship issues. Connie wants to try for a baby, and Stanley's work and long hours are continuously getting in the way. And then to make things more complicated, as Stanley continues his investigation into the violence in Chinatown, he meets and falls in love with a local Chinese reporter called Tracy Tzu. Initially, their relationship is just friendly, and Stanley just wants to kind of get information, pick her mind. Do you know anything that can help me, with my case? But over time, their relationship blossoms, and eventually they get together, all the while he's still married to Connie. About midway through the film, Connie and Stan's relationship basically comes to a head. Like, Connie suspects that Stanley is cheating, and she just doesn't want to, feel like she does. Like, she feels like she's been played like a fool. Basically declares that it's over between her and Stanley. Before Stanley can even react to what Connie said, the two get jumped by 3 guys from the Chinese triads. Connie is then killed in the attack, with Stanley barely making it out alive. Yeah, Connie's death came out of nowhere. I was really shocked. I was like, it was almost like a jump scare. I was like, whoa, what the? The 2 actors are giving a great performance, and you are kind of actually invested in the relationship about, because you feel sad for the Connie character, which I'll get to a bit more in a minute, but you're watching that and you're paying attention, and then out of nowhere this attack happens, and suddenly Connie's dead. Mickey Rourke runs into the bathroom, and he witnesses his wife dying in front of him, and there's just this anguish on Mickey Rourke's face that, man, like, fantastic acting from this man. You really felt Stanley's pain when, in his eyes when he saw that. Great scene. So once Connie is killed, all things go downhill, and Stan basically becomes relentless in his mission to bring down the Chinese, or the head of the Chinese triads, a gangster called Joey Tai, who Stanley believes is responsible for the death of Connie. Mickey Rourke is just, you really feel for the Stanley character, but that's all, credit to Mickey Rourke for delivering such a powerful performance. Once his wife dies, I guess the character realizes, she was innocent in all this, and my involvement in this case has only led to her death, and he really feels that guilt upon him. You know, nothing's going to change Stanley's mind. As I said, he's relentless. He's just, you know, he just doesn't care anymore. He doesn't care about himself. He just wants revenge. Of course, all this gets back to Stanley's superiors. His team basically tell him, we're not going to support you anymore. Back off from Chinatown and back off from Joey Tai. Yeah, man, Mickey Rourke, he just gives an absolute fantastic performance throughout this film. And I really, you know, this isn't Oscar worthy. It really is. He should have at least got an Oscar nomination for this performance. I believe it's actually better than his performance in The Wrestler, in which he actually was nominated. I wasn't liking the character because I hate cheating going on. I know it's a fictional film, but it's supposed to be based in realism, and, you know, a married man cheating on, you know, a married man married to a wife that wants to have a baby with him, and he's openly having sex and cheating with someone else. Of course, it wasn't planned, but still, I personally was like, oh man, this guy's got no morals, man. I can't stand this guy. And once Connie dies, as I said, he comes to that realization of what he's done and what he's given up and what he's lost. A less capable actor would have been able to deliver such a honest, raw performance, you know, to the point where I actually, in the end, felt sorry for Stanley, even though, you know, I can't promote his lifestyle and what he did. I felt sorry for his loss, and it was the fact of how good Mickey Rourke was in the role that made me feel that. As I said, this movie has a very grand scope from the director Michael Cimino, and we see that especially a lot of in the action scenes. There's, you know, really a lot of extras and a lot of explosions and stuff like that. One action scene I want to point out that I really liked was at the start of the movie in the Chinese restaurant, where Tracy is having dinner with Stanley. They're discussing what's going on, the corruption in Chinatown and the rising violence. Out of nowhere, some guys, some hitmen come in with machine guns. They're shooting everyone. It's like, this is a great movie, and you're already hooked in like what's going on. What is Tracy going to give information? You know, you're just concentrating on that. I didn't expect to see hitmen come in and start shooting around, you know, shooting everyone. As I said, it was shot really well. Some of the visuals, you know, the glass flying, the flashes of the guns. As the guns go off, we see Stanley try and protect Tracy. She's laying on the floor. He's kind of hovering over her, and he's got his gun pointing out, and he's, you know. I was like, yeah, man, that's just a great visual. You know, the guy was like, I'm protecting someone, but I'm still going to try and get a shot off, you know. Yeah, thinking about it, Mickey Rourke is a real badass in this movie. He really is. I'm surprised he didn't do more big budget action films, really, because he could pull it off, you know. And yeah, there's a moment where one of the Chinese henchmen gets shot in the chew, and we see the blood like, because usually, obviously, in films we see a lot of people getting shot in the abdomen or whatever. You don't see, it's quite rare. You don't see too many times where people get shot in the foot. And we had a close-up of that, and yeah, I guess because it was kind of rare to me seeing that, I was I felt that, you know, that would have hurt. That would have blown off a few toes, so to speak. I mentioned Connie's death already, but I just want to say, yeah, overall I felt really bad for the Connie character overall. She was just a woman that was scared of aging, really, wanted to have a child before she aged out and couldn't have children anymore. She loved Stanley, wanted to have a family with him, yet he was too focused on his work. And, you know, you asked the question, did he really ever want a family? She asked him that at the beginning of the film. Stanley was like, yeah, of course, I'm just really busy right now, but don't worry. Like, you know, Stanley was putting things off. As an audience member, you ask yourself, you know, when you're watching this, you think, does he really want to start a family? And so at the time of her death, she was having marital issues with Stanley, and she wanted to end the relationship because she found out that Stanley was having an affair with this Chinese reporter called Tracy. Yeah, I don't know, just felt bad for her. I didn't expect her death. It came out of nowhere. And even when the attack was going on, initially I thought she may survive. But once we found out that Connie had actually died, yeah, it was a sad way to go. So Michael Cimino wrote the screenplay with director Oliver Stone after Cimino was having trouble finishing the script. What I found interesting was that production of this film actually began before the final script was completed. I was surprised by that because hearing that the script had issues, I would have thought that would have resulted in a poor script. But I have to say the dialogue in this film, I thought it was a very well written film. The dialogue was punchy and it was intriguing as well. There are some great lines in this movie, especially from Stanley. At the beginning of the film, I remember Stanley says, "In America, nobody remembers anything." Yeah, I just found that statement quite true of today. And there's also quite an important line when Stanley says to Tracy, they're having an argument, and Stanley says, "You know what's destroying America? It's not the booze, it's not the drugs, it's the media, spreading lies." And I thought, wow, man, this guy, man, like, it's so true. And this movie, of course, was written in the mid-80s, but, in terms of media manipulation, we all know about that. How true is that? How, the media feeds us specific stories and doesn't feed us everything or gatekeeps certain things. Yeah, it's just great dialogue, and just thought it really stuck out to me personally. The score for this film was done by David Mansfield. I have to say I really like the score. He also did the score for the Western Heaven's Gate, which also was directed by Michael Cimino. There's a lot of similarities between the score of Heaven's Gate and Year of the Dragon, and I love both soundtracks. They're really, really great stuff. Throughout the movie, in the soundtrack, we get this sweeping acoustic guitar going on, and I loved it. Really, really nice stuff. So in terms of dislikes for Year of the Dragon, my main dislike would have to be the sex scene at Tracy's apartment. Basically, Stanley gets rejected by Tracy. He wants to sleep with her. He then gets kind of snarky and then basically forces himself onto Tracy. It's basically rape because he forcibly kisses Tracy, and in retaliation, Tracy actually slaps Stanley. As I said, this all takes place in her apartment. She invited him in, they were talking, and I guess Stanley got the wrong end of the stick. Now, I had to rewatch this scene again just to kind of make sure I was seeing what I was seeing, because there was a lot of innuendo here, but it was confusing, it really was. So Stanley gets slapped, and then he proceeds to pick up Tracy and then lay her on the bed. The scene then ends. The movie continues on with all of the stuff, the corruption going on in Chinatown, the investigation. From what I just saw, I was expecting to see Tracy go to the police and report what had just happened. I mean, it was basically what I saw was rape. I mean, he forced himself on her, she slapped him, and then he was rough with her, and I mean, he forced her on the bed. I mean, it was clear as day, right? I can't, But then the movie goes on, and they continue their relationship like it didn't happen. And I'm not too sure how the audience is meant to feel about it. From everything that I've seen that's transpired between the two, he has basically attempted to rape her, and in the process she has become aroused and gone along with it. Is that really what, because obviously she doesn't go to the police, the story just continues on. So I found that scene very confusing. I don't know why it just couldn't have been a normal love scene between the two, or if she rejected him, Stanley just walks out, And then what's even more confusing is later on in the movie, Tracy gets attacked by 3 Chinese triad thugs, and she admits to Stanley that she was raped by these guys. She tells Stanley this. He goes completely off the rails and wants revenge, leading to the final showdown of the film. I've got to say, I just felt it was a little rich coming from a guy, Stanley, who had practically done the same thing earlier in the film. I didn't really get, and this is why it's so confusing to me. That was the biggest dislike. It was no need for that. They could have had the sex scene as it normally play out, rather than have a confusing back and forth potential rape. I just didn't get that part of it. So without giving too much away, the final showdown between Stanley and Joey Ty takes place on a bridge. Joey Ty ends up getting caught, and before he can be jailed, he commits suicide. The final scene of the film, we see Joey Ty's funeral, and I did find that a little confusing. So we have the funeral taking place, and we have Tracy reporting from the scene. Stanley comes out of the crowd and causes a scene wanting to arrest everyone. Big crowds of people start pushing and shoving each other. Stanley kind of falls to the floor and then emerges from the crowd with a smile on his face. He looks kind of drunk and he's kind of like, weary or whatever. Tracy comes up to him, he puts his arm around Tracy, and they walk off. And that was the end of the film, and the credits roll, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I didn't really get that last 2 minutes of the film. Like, what kind of authority does Stanley have anymore? And why I guess he was drunk, because it didn't make sense that he wanted to arrest everyone, for what exactly? And yeah, thinking about it, I think the movie would have been better if the film had ended on the bridge with the showdown between Stanley and Joey, with Joey killing himself at the end. Fade to black, roll the credits. That would have worked way better. And also going back to that final scene when Stanley emerges from the crowd, we get this uplifting music kicking in. Now, I love the music, don't get me wrong, but to me it just didn't really fit the outcome of what we were seeing, because at the end of the day, I guess Stanley still has Tracy and they're going to continue their relationship, but Stanley's lost his wife, he's jaded, he's mentally unwell. So, I don't know, I think a more serious theme would have better suited for the final scene. Alright, so ratings for Year of the Dragon 1985. Having thought about this, going back and forth, my final rating for this movie is a strong 8 out of 10. Overall, this is a great movie, as I mentioned, with a big, huge production, a grand scope, awesome cast with some fantastic acting from Mickey Rourke. As I said, it's Oscar worthy. I'm surprised he didn't get an Oscar nomination. Maybe this movie gets a lot of love around movie fan circles, but to a general audience, this movie has kind of been forgotten. Undoubtedly, this movie is an underrated crime thriller that I think most fans of the genre would love. So I highly recommend it. If you have seen it, please let me know what you think in the comment section below. I don't hear, when people talk about Mickey Rourke, I hear, The Wrestler or 2.5 Weeks, but I don't hear people talk about Year of the Dragon, and they should. It's a superb gangster flick.
Like, subscribe.